Hello, and welcome to my review of Tales from the Darkside, the word processor of the gods. Struggling writer Richard Hagstrom, with an annoying wife and a son, gets a posthumous gift from his computer whiz nephew. Act 1. An extremely messy home is shown. Dishes and food are all piled up on the counters in a horrendous mess. Lena is sitting at the table in the messy kitchen listening to the radio. She is eating pastries as there is a knock at the door. She ignores it as the knocking starts going up. Richard opens the door on his own, carrying a big box in with him. He is followed by Tom, who is helping him carry things. He thanks Tom for his help. Tom tells him there are 2 small boxes left out there. Lena remarks that the boxes have junk in them. Richard decides to ask his son Seth to help bring in the boxes when he calls for Seth. Lena tells him to not bother Seth because he's practicing his guitar. Richard goes in Seth's room and asks Seth for help. Seth says later, as he keeps playing his guitar. Seth's habits seem similar to his mother's. They are both overweight and living in filth, and also very lazy. Richard goes back into the kitchen and tells Tom that he will take care of the boxes. He offers Tom something to drink. Tom requests a glass of water. Richard gets him some water and then goes out to get the boxes. Tom tells him in the boxes is the computer, but then corrects himself. It is a word processor that Jonathan Baxter made. Lena scoffs. The whole Baxter family died, and our family are the only relatives left and did not get 1 penny in the will. She feels that Richard's brother was a layabout, and the only thing she feels is that it is unfair that her family had to borrow money to pay for the triple burial of the Baxters, because Jonathan's drunken father drove their van off a cliff. Tom talked about Jonathan not only built a word processor, but went out of his way to make sure that Tom knew about it. Tom thinks that if Jonathan knew that something was going to happen to him. Lena doesn't seem to care about Tom's words. She acts like she's interested in the word processor, but really just marks Richard's writing. She tells both Tom and Richard as Richard walks back in the door that she's only going to make the family money to become rich because she is doing something constructive. She plays bingo. She leaves the room. Tom tells Richard that he is really sorry about the law, that they were good neighbors except for Jonathan's father becoming drunk and driving off a cliff. In the basement, Richard brings Tom a beer. Tom asks Richard if he's an author, and Richard doesn't seem to think so. Even though he has 1 book published, it did not sell well. It got bad reviews. He mentions that he always wanted a word processor but hasn't been able to afford one. Richard is sure it couldn't work, but Tom let him know about Jonathan was an electrical genius. Richard says that he knew as a freshman that Jonathan did with science fairs against seniors. Tom tells Richard about kids who are scientific geniuses as Richard runs his finger across the big red delete button on the computer. Tom mentions how Jonathan was a fine boy. Richard smiles. Tom admits this and repeats that he would not be surprised if the word processor works. Richard reaches into the box and picks up a red envelope that reads Uncle Richard. Act 2. Richard asks Seth where his mother is, to which Seth yells that she is out playing bingo. Richard turns on the word processor. It tells him to put the disk into the drive and hit execute. Richard does this. A yellow screen reads, "Happy birthday, Uncle Richard," from Jonathan. Richard had a memory where Jonathan offers to build Richard a word processor because Richard always wanted one. Richard mentions how he can increase his output by 50% as a writer with one. As they talk, Richard makes a joke about Jonathan getting busy on his word processor. Jonathan agrees, saying he doesn't have much time, and backs away from Richard. Richard starts to wonder if Jonathan knew he was going to die. Richard hits the clear button, and the birthday wish disappears. Richard then types in, "My brother was a worthless drunk." Over that, Richard then types, "My brother married Belinda, the woman I loved." Seemingly only typing to test out the word processor, Richard turns and sees a picture of his wife. Richard then types, "My wife pictures in the bookcase in my study." Richard then hits delete. The word processor tells him that it is working, and it claims that it is done. With a shock, Richard notices the picture has vanished. Richard then types, my wife's picture is on the bookcase where it was before." Richard hits execute and the picture returns. Bewildered by this, Richard types, "My floor is bare except for 12 Spanish doubloons in a small stack." Richard hits execute. The word processor tells him it is working. Richard looks on the floor and sees nothing. When he turns the other way, however, he sees a small sack on the floor. He reaches for it and falls off his chair. Richard takes the blooms upstairs and weighs them at 64 ounces. He then takes out a newspaper to check gold prices. The price of gold is $395. This makes the doubloons worth $25,280. The phone rings. Richard yells at Self to answer it. Self tells him he will get it later. Annoyed, Richard grabs the phone. Tom is on the phone. Richard tells Tom that it works, that Tom would not believe. Tom assures Richard that he would believe it because Jonathan was a very bright boy. He also tells him that Jonathan was a very loving boy, but sometimes love could be misdirected. He asks Richard if he knows what he means. Richard asks Tom to come over, but Tom refuses. He feels that whatever Richard knows about the rust processor should remain between Richard and Jonathan. He does, however, tell Richard to be careful. Richard looks at the doubloons as sad music begins to play. Act 3. Richard turns on the red processor, seeing the birthday wish again. He tells Jonathan that he should bet his sweet life that it is a good birthday, but instantly regrets the use of his own words. Getting back to the main screen, Richard types in, "I have ideas for 10 best-selling novels." After thinking for a moment, Richard changes the 10 to a 20. Before he can execute, the power shuts off due to Seth's guitar playing. Richard, finally getting angry at Seth, yells at his son for his action. Richard gets up and throws the circuit breakers and the word processor comes back on, and Seth's guitar starts playing back up. Richard starts to think and hits the clear button. He then types, "My son is Seth Robert Hagstrom." Slowly, Richard hits the delete button. The word processor tells him that it's working, and then is done. Immediately, the guitar playing stops and Seth disappears from the family picture. Richard goes upstairs and notices that Seth is gone, so is all his stuff. He then has a fantasy about Lena coming home and blaming him for killing Seth. She then tells him how Richard never loved her, and said because he was bitter that he never asked Jonathan's mother out. She blames him for treating Seth like crap because Richard only really loved Jonathan. Richard denies this, telling her Jonathan was a good boy and Seth was a creep. He yells at her, telling her that is the reason he loved Jonathan. He lets her know he did not murder Seth, he deleted him. Back in reality, Lena is at the door with a huge turkey. Richard asks Lena if she is sorry that they never had children. Lena seems shocked at the question and remarks that she wouldn't have anything to do with a regret. When she asks Richard if the word processor works, he denies it. When Richard mentions to Lena that he is surprised that the word processor arrived that day because it is his birthday, she tells him for some damn money for his birthday present and walks away. Richard starts giggling as he realizes he could change the world and no one will remember but him. Going backstairs and drinking a beer, Richard sees smoke coming out of the word processor. He types in, "My wife is Adelina Maybell Warren Hagstrom." Richard hits delete. The word processor tells him it is working and that it is done. Richard's wife's picture is gone. More smoke is coming from the word processor. "I'm a man who lives alone," except the word overload starts to repeat on the screen. The word processor is smoking more. Working against time, Richard types, "I'm a man who lives alone except for my beloved wife Belinda and my wonderful son Jonathan." Richard hits execute several times. The word processor keeps overloading. Fearing his last wish won't work, Richard then types it over and over. Finally, the word processor catches on fire. Jonathan is standing on the stairs hoping his father is okay. He mentions that he isn't sure why he used some crummy parts, remarking that he just felt like he had to. After he makes his plans as to what to do with the word processor parts, Richard turns around and sees Belinda standing in the white light holding a cup of coffee. Now this episode, it starts off slow, but then it picks up. It's very weird. He's basically alone. He wants to change the world and make stuff in his reality. He hates his wife. He hates the family that he's with. So his friend gives him a word processor, his neighbor, and he discovers that it could do anything. So he uses it to change. His world and his outcome. He hates his family. They're both lazy. His son and his wife, fat and overweight. So he types in the word processor that he wants to change his life, that he never had this wife, that he never had a son named Seth. Then he hits delete and the word processor deletes. He never had his wife picture on the wall. He hits delete and the picture deletes, but then he says where it used to be. He asks for gold doubloons. He gets $25,280. He then says that he has both best novels. Overall, this episode, I would rate it as a 7 out of 10. It starts off slow. It is very boring, but then picks up. I hope you like this video. Thanks for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, and remember all, I love you 3000. I love you 3000.